Hello and welcome to a new video. Today we're going to talk about graphics cards and why you probably shouldn't buy one and when you should buy one, and also why I don't like NVIDIA since Pascal. Okay, since Turing. Let's say since Turing. I mean, there are some redeeming factors about Pascal, but Turing was the point where I really disliked NVIDIA. So, but I'll give you the reasons why. So, GTX 780 Ti, very old graphics card. Since almost, this is almost 8 years. This is really, really old, right? So a lot of people think, well, old years graphics cards, you can't play shit with it. And yeah, Red Dead Redemption 2, arguably the second most demanding game you can possibly play right now. The most demanding being Cyberpunk. The reason I didn't take Cyberpunk is because it has just been released and it's a mess. It doesn't perform well anywhere. It has bugs, and I don't like taking a game in that state and use it as an example. That's a terrible idea. So I thought to myself, let's take the next best thing, which is Red Dead Redemption 2. And as you can see here, this is 1080p Ultra preset and runs 40 FPS average. That's pretty darn playable. And considering that most of the games you won't really notice the difference between medium and ultra unless you put them side by side and pixel peep. So yeah, I would definitely say the GTX 980 Ti, if you have one of those, you probably don't want to upgrade if you have a 1080p or 1440p monitor. The only time where you really want to upgrade is when you want to desperately play 4K for some reason. Because it's not that the GTX 780 Ti cannot handle it per se, it's because of the VRAM limitations. Like 3GB VRAM on 4K resolution, that is very yikes. That is going to be a problem. That is going to be a huge bottleneck. Even 1440p here in Red Dead Redemption will probably be a challenge. It's already soaking up the 3GB of VRAM, which I believe this card has. Let me check. Yeah. So that's the only time where you actually would like to upgrade, if you also have a monitor that can do that. Otherwise, you don't really need to. But why is that? Why have we seemingly staggered in terms of performance with these cards? Well, I cannot tell you precisely why. Like on actual, how an architecture would work, and even if I could explain to you, I could possibly do it because of some non-agreement disclosure. So, no, non-disclosure agreement. So yeah, I'm just saying. So. But what it boils down to is we're not making the progress anymore that we used to. If you were to compare, let's say, a 2013 graphics card like the Kepler series with, let's say, an 8 year, like from that point 8 years back, you would legitimately not even be able to launch a game. Like let's say you want to play GTA 5. I think that's 2015 or something. It's a little off, but whatever. If you want to play GTA 5, you could technically do it on, let's say, a GTX. Actually, what was 8 years from that? Math. Okay, it's very easy math, but whatever. There would be a graphics card from 2005. Oh god, yeah, you couldn't even launch it. I don't even think DirectX 10 was available back then. No, there clearly wasn't DirectX 10, so you couldn't even launch it. And even if you could, you would have like 5 FPS, maybe 2 or something. I don't know. We had huge generational leaps, and the leaps have been smaller and smaller and smaller until we actually got to a point where we're just kind of reusing the same architecture at this point, and specifically NVIDIA is doing this. And yeah, this is going to get into the more why I dislike Turing and Ampere as such. So let's just show you for now what they have done from 2013 onwards, and why things haven't happened that much. Now, if we look at and this is actually something I'm not entirely sure how this even works, because this is a little bit of a mystery. I don't know if this is misinformation of the Kepler side. I think, if I remember correctly, these are correct. So explain it to me, please. But as you can see here, the process size is 28 nanometers. This has 7 million, a little over 7 million transistors, and die size, whatever, and it has 250 watts. We have 2880 CUDA cores, so we have pretty good stats here. Here's the problem. This is the only thing I cannot really explain, is Okay, so it's the same process size. It's 250 watts. It had a little less shaders. It has the same GDDR5, same memory bus, very similar bandwidth too. How in the fuck is this one faster on the same TDP? To me, that's still a mystery I have not solved yet. I do not know why this is. I know this is obviously a fact. I know that Maxwell was more performance per watt efficient, but I do not know how this even worked. Like, legitimately confused. So there's that. So if someone could explain this to me, I would be grateful. But this is what happens though. This is what happened though. I know this is what is going on, and I guess that's the most important part. But this one, Now let's look at Pascal. Now, this was a huge deal because this was the true generational leap which we would actually want to see. If we look at these two here, we can see, okay, this is 100%. If we compare it to the 980 Ti, we will see that the 780 Ti is 22% slower. So it's still a significant difference, but it's not huge, I'd say. Well, no, now that I say it, it's obviously not true, because if you look at the 970, right, it performs at the same with 148 watts basically. So that's still a huge deal, but not as huge as the 1080 Ti. If we look at the 1080 Ti, this one is the most ridiculous leap, or rather just the entire Pascal architecture is just ridiculous. Because if we look at the 1070 here, right, it's significant. Okay, it's not significant, but yeah, it is definitely faster. I wouldn't say significant, but it's definitely faster. If we check the graphics card out, what we will see is it runs at 150 watts. That is actually quite nuts. So if we look at 1080 Ti specifically though, we'll see it runs at 250 watts, and this is pretty accurate still. Very important. 250 watts. It requires one 6-pin and one 8-pin, and as we can see here, GDDR5X. It's definitely faster bandwidth. We've got some upgrades there. We've got more CUDA cores. And overall, the performance per watt has been increased to such a point where it's just ridiculously good. However, this is when NVIDIA started to lock down the VBIOS modding. We have done VBIOS modding since God knows how long, and AMD hasn't done shit about it yet. They're doing it much easier for anyone, because they're kind of storing the VBIOS in the registry of Windows and just load that instead of the actual graphics card, which is hilarious. I love the fact that AMD does that. But with NVIDIA, it's like, okay, so if you want to modify a Pascal VBIOS to get beyond this TDP, which a lot of cards easily can do, you would actually go out of your way to have to desolder the VBIOS chip, use a hardware programmer, mod the VBIOS, flash it back on, and then yay, you have it. Or you could use a clip with your hardware programmer. That would also work, but you have to have a decent clip, obviously. So you don't have to necessarily desolder it, but you need some specific hardware to actually flash the SPI chip. Now, the problem here is you can only modify the VBIOS to a certain extent. You cannot really change the boosting behavior because you cannot really get access to that. So it will still start to throttle at, I think, what was it, 52 degrees, something like that. Somewhere around there, it just starts not throttling, but it will lower its boost for some reason. So yeah, it's a little stupid, right? And these are the things you could just tell the card, you run at 1.5 gigahertz at this voltage, boom, end of story. But you cannot really do it. You can kind of ask the card to do it, but depending on certain situations, the card will just flat out refuse to do it, or it'll just, do something similar but not exactly, which makes overclocking a pain in the ass. And for the most part, you don't really overclock these cards anyways. What you're actually doing is undervolting the card so it can kind of hit the target TDP with higher clock speeds. So you can technically, you can't overclock a Pascal card. All you're doing is just trying it to boost higher more efficiently to the TDP. That's kind of what you're trying to do, because you cannot directly tell the boosting behavior to do whatever you want. This is why I say I have like a little love-hate relationship with Pascal, because in a one way you can modify some things and it is a huge generational leap, but the problem is a lot of freedom, a lot of control has been taken away from you. Now, NVIDIA isn't stupid, because they want to resell this card. They don't give a shit. They want to resell this card 2 more times at the very least. I do not know if RTX 4000 series will also be a fucking iteration of this, but Yeah, it probably is going to be if this shit continues. This is Intel all over again. So let's go on RTX 2080 Ti. Now we can see the process size is a little smaller and we can see 250 watts. However, as we can notice here, the power connectors are now 2x8 pin. Yeah, now the TDP is officially at 250 watts, but in reality the card drains more around 280 watts. Yeah. So what they did here is obviously they improved a little bit more in the memory, or there's actually a rather big difference in terms of memory speed. They also gave you more CUDA cores. However, the actual performance per watts, it hasn't changed that much. It's a slightly more efficient version of Pascal if you want. And this is where I really start hating this, because if they let us do the VBOS mods as we're like, no, supposed to be able to, or not supposed to be able to do obviously, but which we could technically, which we could do previous, generations like Maxwell and older, we could easily have the GTX cards perform the same as the RTX cards, no problem. If we would up the TDP of the 1080 Ti, we could easily make it very competitive to the RTX 2080 Ti. The only difference would be, well, you don't have the Turing cores, which arguably for the most part are kind of useless for the vast majority of people. So there's that. However, with this series, they did not only try to prevent us from, writing on VBOS with stupid signatures that normal users cannot get. No. They made it much worse now. Now they decided, oh, we have to encrypt the BIOS so that the users cannot do it in the first place. And that is a really scummy thing to do, because what they wanted to do is resell the RTX series cards again. Because as you can see here, the RTX 20 cards are basically just TDP upped versions of the GTX cards with extra CUDA cores, slight optimizations here and there, and the Turing cores, and that's just fucking stupid. As you can see here, what's the difference between, let's say, an RTX 2070, right? See here, RTX 2070, 175 watts. Ah, okay, nice, super. Let's check this one out. 200 and NVIDIA. What are you doing? Oh, you're trying to resell the same card. Is that what you're doing? Well, easy money, I guess. And because you cannot modify the VBIOS, this is basically what they have done, right? They have just upped the TDP and called a new card. And the same thing with the 3000 series. What have they done with the 3000, like the 3090 Ti? Well, TDP, up the TDP, and be like, yep, okay, new RAM, a little bit here and there. But it's basically, again, Pascal in a fucking... I mean, obviously they have done, small optimizations, otherwise the process size wouldn't be smaller and the die would be different, blah, 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 blah. But they're not significant. They're not huge differences in terms of, performance per watts, if at all. I mean, the TDP here is 350 watts and the card realistically boosts again, the TDP is definitely over. It spikes, I think, almost to 400s, if I've looked at when I've looked at some benchmarks. Now, this is basically what's going on in a nutshell. They're reselling Pascal with a bit more features and optimizations again. This is Intel all over again. They're basically reselling Skylake all the time. This is why I said goodbye, NVIDIA. I'm kind of sick and tired of you reselling the same card to me and not giving me the freedom to do whatever I want. And that's why I went AMD for now. And NVIDIA is the exact opposite. AMD is the exact opposite. They're ridiculously easy to, they store the goddamn VBIOS in your registry, which you can then mod and just tell the registry, okay, this is my new VBIOS, and the card will behave according to that for some stupid reason. I don't know. AMD, what the hell? I love you for it, to be honest. I love it. I love AMD for it. Because of the freedom I'm getting as an overclocker. For most gamers, this won't matter. I guess some will matter. It's more of a principle thing, right? It's like, okay, so the only reason I have to buy a new card is because so you can basically, in a nutshell, just turn a slider up. What the fuck? Right? So this is personally, and as you can see here, because of the fact that it's, when you create a game, right, you want to optimize it for the consoles, which are, they always have the same hardware, right? So they have to aim for that console to begin with, and if they port it to a PC, they need to optimize it enough that a medium-end graphics card can handle it. But because of the fact that a medium-end graphics card in a system has a certain amount of watts, which you have to account for, and we don't really have a huge performance per watt boost, that's when we have this funny situation going on where a game like Red Dead Redemption 2, which is really demanding, will still run really well on old hardware because it has to run decently on medium-end hardware. And because medium-end hardware hasn't really gone anywhere, because you cannot expect a medium-end PC to have a 800-watt power supply or 700-watt power supply. You just can't. So you cannot really just up the ante of the power consumption, because that would just be, you know, a stupid idea to begin with, because you would force the consumer to have a bigger power supply, and then the PC would suddenly not be as cheap and medium-end anymore. And this is why you can see that because of this performance to watt, you know, non-improvement, where we basically don't have an improvement anymore, we have this, or just small improvements, we have this beautiful state right now where you don't really need to buy graphics. If you have a 1060 and a 1080 monitor, 1080p monitor, you'll do fine. You'll do absolutely fine. You can also see the meme, the GTX 750 Ti meme, where they're like, this card will never die, and it runs Cyberpunk at 720p 30 FPS. That stupid card is refusing to die. I swear to God, it refuses to die. And I love the fact that we got to this state where we still have new stuff, but we don't have to upgrade to it. And this is why I will tell people that if you want to upgrade a graphics card, well, try the game first. Try and see if it runs. You will be surprised. Most games will run. Obviously, if you're a person that has, you know, I don't know, a GTX 480 for some reason, or I don't know, you haven't upgraded from something really old, then yes, of course you should upgrade the graphics card. And if you have a 4K monitor and you want to play 4K games, then yes, you have to upgrade something with a lot more VRAM. But for the vast majority of people, you're trying to upgrade for a new game, not realizing that your old graphics card is just fine. So yeah, this is basically my rant about this is actually why you should buy a graphics card turned into NVIDIA. Why are you encrypting your stupid VBIOS? Ah! Yeah, that was a nice turn. Fuck it, I'm not gonna redo the video. I hate it. I'm getting too emotional about this NVIDIA crap. I ran with NVIDIA for 9 years, and they fucking screwed me over. Ah! Yeah. I hope AMD is gonna treat me better. I don't know how they're gonna have with the new cards, but if anything is gonna go by history, it's probably gonna be a disaster on release and gonna be, you know, workable in like 6 to 8 months from now. So that's when I'm gonna wait to upgrade to a newer one, if at all. I don't think I'm gonna upgrade anytime soon. I'm kind of happy with the current card. So yes. I'm also gonna do more of a because a lot of people have this idea about AMD, because a lot of people have this question, NVIDIA versus AMD, and I'm gonna make a video about that too, to be more precise, because I think a lot of people just misguided with a lot of old, like really outdated information. So that's gonna be next. I hope you learned something, and on to the next.